Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another Strategoi Faction Focus review. In fact, this is the last one, unless GW surprises everyone with a new army. But they did tell us this is the last one, so I don't think so. Jonas, how are you feeling? You getting weepy yet?
I mean, a little bit, but I'm not sure whether it's tears or blood.
Oh, you're my favorite Hexgorger skull. Um, yeah. Jonas, we were talking about seeing as we didn't want this road to end anytime soon. We were talking about maybe doing a tier list of what we think of what we've seen of each of the armies.
hmm
Maybe we'll do it tomorrow. Who
Yeah,
knows?
that's what I was thinking as
Um,
well.
yeah, and for those for those that are already thinking about it, it's going to be not only in the context of everything we've seen, but it's going to be still just with what we actually know for a fact exists, not with projections of what we think is going to happen. I guess
Yeah.
so. Because that's just we've seen the chats go both sides for everything. There's a lot of doom and gloom. There's a lot of positivity, and there's everything in between. And we don't know yet. But tomorrow we should know what all the rules are going to be for the core rules, at least the regular rules, because all of the pre-order stuff is going to stop being on non-disclosure for the content creators that have received it. Now, unfortunately, we're not there yet, guys, but all of your following and supporting of the channel is definitely pushing us in that direction. So thank you so much for that. And maybe one of these days we'll be in that elite crowd ourselves. Jonas, you want to add anything else before we jump in?
No, I'm good to go.
All right. Corn. I think the for me the too long didn't read is that Corn seems just like it was
Yep.
with a few big exceptions, but I if I were a Corn player, then again I've said this so many times, I would actually be pretty happy with what I see here.
For sure.
Um, now, some of the rules got moved around or brought down a bit, but in light of everything we've seen, I think they came out relatively unscathed. Of course, Korn himself or herself or whatever Korn is would probably prefer that everything got scathed, but here we are nonetheless. So if you haven't ever played Korn before, this is in theory supposed to be a really aggressive melee type army, but has consistently proven to be a very tactical, nitpicky, little details kind of army. And I don't know if that looks like it's changing much in this iteration of the rules. Jonas, do you have any experience playing against Corn? Do you have any strong opinions about how they've been in third edition?
It's one of those armies that I've always kept a close. What is the English expression here? A close
Ion?
eye on. Yeah, that's the one. Because it's always been tempting me. I like the straightforwardness of it. At least it kind of tries to sell itself like that, but it's never actually straightforward, which I really like. There's so much techiness in the army, so I've always been keeping up to date with the rules. Also, because it seems like such a mean army at times, and it has quite a reputation. I feel, but I've never actually got to face it in all of the games that I've played. So it's not that I've played that many, but probably a little bit more than the super general crowd, but definitely less than you tournament players out there.
Yeah, I've gotten quite a good bit of experience
I
playing
can
some Corn
imagine.
since the new book came out. It's a very popular army and has been really strong in the meta since the new book came out. It was kind of languishing a bit before the most recent book, but now
hmm
it's been in a really strong place. So, like any of the four main Chaos gods, they had a summoning mechanic that was bound with a way to generate summoning points. And Corn, more than the others, I guess all of them really, has kept its system without the summoning mostly.
Yeah.
So it's this thing called Blood Tithe. And as far as I'm aware, nothing changed here. So basically, you start the battle with none. And then every time a unit, friendly or enemy, is destroyed, you get a Blood Tithe point. So this is very similar to how it used to be for, say, spellcasting for Zinch, but that's gone for Zinch. Now it's just they love it when even their own units die. So they're kind of incentivized to take small units so that they get more of these points. Um, Now, you use these as currency to not spend on summoning anymore, but to spend on the following five abilities that we see on this page. The way it used to work is you had a table of abilities that had a blood type points cost of 1 to 8. So there was no overlap with their costs. And at the end, generally speaking, at the end of each hero phase, you were able to purchase one of these, and then you'd lose the points and have to save them back up for something else.
Mm-hmm.
And then it gave you an ability that usually happened at that moment or set you up for a phase later in the turn. Now they've kind of spread them out into multiple phases. So they kind of spread them out weirdly on this page, but you'll see 2 for the hero phase, 2 for the movement phase, 1 for the combat phase. And they're not even sorted by what their blood tithe costs are, really. I mean, you could kind of follow a
Or in
trail
a
along here.
zigzag pattern, they almost are, but I think they ordered them this way just to fit them all on one page.
That's fair. Yeah. So the basic rule is just like it was before, you can only use 1 per turn. But honestly, if a lot of units aren't dying anyway, you might have a hard time getting even the possibility to even think about using more than 1 a turn. The one big exception to this was Murder Lust, which got changed how it used to work. They said you could buy it up to 3 times in a turn, so that's gone. So let's talk about that one first, just because it's the cheapest one, and it's where we're what I just mentioned. So Murder Lust, and these. So it says the same text that all of them have, that you can only use it if you haven't used any other blood type abilities this turn. You spend a point, and you have to pick, in this case, a Blades of Khorne unit that is not in combat. That unit can move 3 inches, and it can move into combat. This used to be D6 inches, so now you are on the bottom end of average here, but at least you know it's 3 inches. So it's kind of like a pile-in that we saw with one of the other armies.
Yeah.
Um, and then it does have the keywords Blood Tithe and Move, which we were talking about this before going on. I can't keep straight how this rule works with interaction. I don't know if this is in place of any other moves you could do during the movement phase, or if it needs the core rule to make it so you can only do one of them. In which case, if that is the case, that what I just said, then you would be able to do this and make a normal move, which obviously is stronger.
Yeah,
And
I
then, of
expect
course,
that.
yeah, probably, because it doesn't seem like it's doing enough work otherwise.
Hmm.
Um, and then it's, dragging you into combat. They mention even in the art, this is really great to use in your opponent's turn, because then you can, sneakily move into combat and
Yeah.
maybe keep them from piling onto an objective, or tie up a unit that didn't want to be tied up, or stop them from getting their charge bonuses, any number of things. And then, of course, just guarantee that you get to fight. Yeah, so the fact that you can only do it once now is definitely nerfing it back, once per turn, I mean. And the fact that it's not D6 might be like a feel bad for some people. What are your thoughts on this, Jonas?
I think most Gorn players will just be pretty happy they get to retain this ability because it's such a potent ability. I mean, this is basically half of what the Iron Jaws get. So,
Sure. Yeah.
I mean, you get 4 other things to play around with. So I think no complaints here. Since everything gets a little bit more, well, I wouldn't say nerfed, but put in its place. I kind of figured they would nerf this a little bit.
Sure. Especially considering its price, it's a very
Yeah.
reasonable ability.
Yeah.
Yeah. I could have seen them just making it 2 times or something like that, just to meet them halfway, but I still think it has utility.
Yeah, they don't like to do that this edition so far. We've talked about that several times now. Like sometimes it says 1, and I'm like, this could easily do twice a game or twice a turn or something like. But they've not tried that before.
Yeah. So, I mean, if you want to spend 2 blood type points instead of the one here twice, which you can't do, we could go over to Spell Eater Curse, which is the zigzagging down to the left.
Mm-hmm.
This is a reaction to your opponent declaring a spell ability, and you basically spend those 2 points and you auto unbind the spell. What's new about this mostly is that you can do it in your own turn if they do a magical intervention,
Yeah.
which is kind of interesting. That said, it means, remember, you can only buy one of these abilities per turn. And of course, you have to have enough points to do so. But I don't know if that's going to be your favorite one to be spending it on, considering what we're about to read for the other ones. But obviously, an auto unbind is really good. That said, Khorne lost their Hatred of Sorcery rule
Yep.
that had a 5-up spell ignore. And then that was also, there was a way to make that better. And then it also generated Blood Tithe points. So I think that's going to be maybe definitely something that weakens them to Magic a bit more than they are used to being. Do you have any thoughts on either that being gone or this ability?
Yeah, you covered almost everything that I wanted to say, so that's great. Yeah, the fact that they don't get +1 Blood Tithe from unbinding spells is pretty big, I feel. Especially since you want to get these abilities off as much as you can. And then also losing the 5-up spell ignore makes this Blood Tithe ability a little bit more tempting, I suppose. Because there are those spells in a game where you're like, man, if I could just have unbound that would be great. Obviously, I'm thinking of all of the merciless blizzards out there that we won't be getting anymore. But I'm also thinking about spells like Ticklis's Wardsave, for example. If your opponent pops a spell off that you're thinking is gonna ruin your plan, this is very nice having your back pocket. I mean, when I played against Stormcast, and I do quite a lot actually, my regular opponent usually brings a Incantor just for the auto unbind.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think this is actually something that you'll see most often used against or by players that know their opponent's armies well, because they can probably gauge how important it is to save up to Blood Tithe for an auto unbind, whereas more casual players will look at the tasty 8 Blood Tithe ability here at the bottom slot, or Triumphant, for example, and they'll go for that, for example.
Sure. Yeah, because it's more Johnny or
Yeah.
Timmy is.
Yeah, it's just also, it's more flashy, so.
Yeah. Yeah. I was just double checking. I think you said something about if you unbind, you get a blood tithe point, but I don't see that anywhere in their rules. So maybe you're thinking
What's
of a
the
specific.
rule where you got a Blood Tithe point for? Is it just for any spell casts? Or
It's if you spell ignore this, like
okay.
the way this used to, or what they used to have the hatred of sorcery roll on a
Right.
5-up, and you could make that. There was a blood tithe thing you could do to improve the chances that would
Yeah,
that would make
4-up,
the
I
spell.
think.
Yeah, you could keep going. You could go as far as
Oh,
you want. Really.
right, yeah.
But yeah, maybe there was also a unit that got you more blood type points that way. There was certainly a prayer, and I think we still have it. We've already seen it, right? Or maybe not. But we saw an early example of a guy. I'll have to go back and look while you're
Yeah, it was
talking.
the Solar Priest with the big axe that we saw.
Yeah. Okay, so let's take a look at the other hero phase one. This is the one that costs 4 blood tithe points.
Mm-hmm.
Brass Skull Meteor. You spend 4 your blood tithe points, and you pick an enemy unit that is visible, no range, but it has to be visible to a specific Blades of Khorne hero. You roll 8 dice, and for each 3+, inflict 1 mortal damage on that target. So what this used to be, it had only a blood tithe cost of 3 before, and it wasn't bound to being within sight of a hero. So you could do it even if all your heroes were dead. Um, but it was roll 8 dice, and for each 5+, the unit suffers 1 mortal wound. But then it was on 3+ if the enemy unit had a wounds characteristic of 10 or more, or had 10 or more models.
Hmm.
So now it's guaranteed to do that average of 5 1/3 mortal damage, without caring for which target is, but it costs 1 more. And like I said, it has to be bound around the hero. What are your thoughts on this one?
Seems like the one that I want to spend the least amount of Blood Tithe on. As in, not the least amount. I just want to use this the fewest times.
What about for sniping heroes? I mean, it
Yeah, that's
doesn't
the only thing that I could
average.
seek, is because on average you're doing like 5 to 6, so that's enough to kill a small hero. But then 4 Blood Tithe is a lot, Ryan. I don't know. It depends how good that hero is, obviously, and how important it is. But
Well, fun fact is if you kill that hero, you get 1 blood tithe point.
that's true.
So
Yeah.
then it goes back to being 3 in a
Yeah,
way.
I just imagine a world where you're spending 4 of your precious Blood Tithe and you just don't roll enough 3s to get that hero down, and you're like, well, okay.
Sure. Fair enough. Yeah, this army's not really known for having a lot of direct damage spells like that, I don't think, or like not spells but abilities.
Hmm.
So they do have other ways to generate mortal wounds, as we'll see later. But from a distance like this, I think that's a pretty unique thing for the army.
Yeah,
So
it'll just really depend on how often and how quickly you can generate your Blood Tithe. And I
yeah,
think it's hard to gauge for us how good that's going to be, or easy that's going to be, because it's such a different game. You can't double reinforce units anymore. There's much less mortal wounds around, so units might be actually more tanky. So we'll have to see.
yeah. Um, Yeah. Well, it also the saves, there's less save stacking,
Yeah,
so who knows.
yeah.
Okay, the combat phase one is the next most expensive. It costs 6 blood type points. Heads must roll is the name of the rule. For the rest of the turn, add 1 to the ring characteristic of melee weapons used by friendly Blades of Khorne. If I'm not mistaken, this is pretty much identical to what
Yeah.
it was before. Yeah, so I mean, good. Adding Ren to your whole army is pretty neat. And obviously, if you're saving up your points and debating whether you go for this or a combination of the other ones, or the big one maybe, if they've got shit saves, then you're going to be like, well, I don't need the rend. I was already good anyway. So you just don't have to go for this one, but you can customly choose to use this one against armies where it's really
Mm-hmm.
necessary. So I think it's still a great ability, and 6 blood type is just going back to that point of what's the economy like of getting
Yeah,
blood type,
yeah,
like you just said.
yeah. And in a way, this got actually just this got a little bit better because, as you mentioned, there's less safe stacking now. So getting that -1 to rent extra, it's pretty nice.
Yeah, you just reminded me that there's actually another thing that occurred to me about this is because you used to have to declare these in the hero phase.
Mm-hmm.
So now what you can do is you can just kind of not use it, and then maybe they don't know what they're getting themselves into. So say on
Yeah,
on their turn, they charge you thinking, oh well, he's got the points, but I don't know for a fact that for this whole turn they're going to be boosted. And then you say, no, screw it, I'm boosting my guys. I decided to use my point
mm-hmm.
on the basis of what actually lands in combat. Imagine that the corn player previously had to make that commitment before even knowing for a fact what was going to happen. So I think the fact that the timing is delayed is actually a plus for them.
Yeah, that's definitely true. Yeah.
Okay, and then our last and most expensive ability is Slaughter Triumphant. You're right that this is definitely the most Timmy or kind of like flashy. For
Mm-hmm.
8 blood type points, you can pick one of the following 2 effects. You can either add 1 to the tax characteristic of all melee weapons by Blades of Khorne units for the rest of the battle. Obviously, this is amazing. And there's nothing stopping you from doing this more times
Yeah.
in the game other than it costs a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So if you happen to be just like, this would be a win more type thing. If you ever get to have +2 attacks on your guys because of using this twice, it probably means you're winning.
Well, or you've lost your entire army. Like,
Sure. And then you've got one little unit, one
yeah,
hero running
one
around
guy
with
with
+2
+2
attacks.
attacks.
Exactly. And the other ability is very flavorful. I like it a lot. It's the closest thing we get to a true summoning ability.
Mm-hmm.
It's picking a friendly, non-unique Bloodthirster unit that's been destroyed, so not Scarbrand.
Yeah.
Set up an identical replacement unit on the battlefield more than 9 inches from all enemy units. Now, it used to cost, because you used to have a summoning table, and a greater demon, the Bloodthirsters, used to cost 10. So it's now 2 cheaper in that sense. And obviously, it's modular, so you have a couple things you could choose here if you don't ever have that. Obviously, you had to take a Bloodthirster in your list, and it had to have died already. But they die kind of easily.
Well,
You
less
a
so
lot of times
now.
less so now, but yes, they like to be in there, right? And
Sure.
and and so it's coming back, but with no wounds on it. It's just coming back
Yeah.
as a full strength bloodthirster outside of 9 inches. And because it's identical replacement, I think that means that if the one that died had your heroic trait and artifact, it comes back with those too. Um, so if that's the case, that's definitely better than the summoned one that you used to have.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's actually pretty cool if you're going to run like a bloodthirster kind of build, just to have that in your back pocket. Be like,
Yeah.
well, I don't care if you kill my dude. Maybe I'll get up to the price here that I need.
Yeah, it's also cool if you don't run a bloodthirster building, you just have the one. It's just a nice thing to have. As you mentioned, it's like if you have that win more scenario, or the opposite side, like you're losing quite badly, the +1 attack might not actually matter as much as a completely fresh bloodthirster. So
Sure, like you were saying, if it's down to that one guy that's getting
yeah,
+2
I'd
attack,
pick the bloodthirster for sure.
take the plus. Yeah, for sure. So I mean, I think it's flavorful, and the bloodthirster we're going to see is still pretty good.
Yeah.
So yeah. Now, things that you might be saying aren't on this page, where did they go?
Well, before
As
that,
far
Ryan, I want to quickly
Yes.
mention about the
Yeah.
Bloodthirster resummoning here. We made this mistake in the Sylvanet video from yesterday where we said you could keep summoning back Alariel, but in the Zinch article there was a phrase that said you cannot replace a replacement unit. So that would also be the case for your Bloodthirster. So if you're only bringing the one, you're only bringing him back once.
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, like you said, getting 2 sets of
Yeah,
8 blood
it's
type points.
unlikely, but I'm just saying it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, good catch. So things we lost from the Blood Tithe table. Let's see if I'm missing anything big here. We had Murder Lust, we had the Spell Eater Curse, but it used to do no, it's good. The Meteor was still there. We talked about that. We had the Apoplectic Frenzy. I don't know if I'm saying that right, which was pick one Blades of Khorne unit within 3 inches of an enemy unit, and it can fight. It kind of exists in something we're about to see.
Yeah.
We already mentioned the +1 to hatred to sorcery rolls. That's entirely gone. And then,
Did you mention the Loci already?
well, I'm just talking about the Blood Tithe right now, and then we'll
Okay,
get to that.
okay, yeah.
Oh, yeah. And the last Blood Tithe that doesn't exist anymore is let the blood flow. Roll 1 dice for each unit on the battlefield that's within 3 inches of Blades of Khorne. On a 2-up, it suffers D3. So that doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah.
But go ahead, tell us about the Locust.
Yeah, so you had this rule that if you were within, I'm not sure whether it was wholly within. I imagine it was wholly within 8 inches. I think, Ryan.
Well, finish the sentence, and I'll
Yeah. So if you were wholly within range of a Khorne demon, you would. Oh no, I remember now. If you were a demon, and you were outside of 8 inches of your opponent, you had a 5-up ward.
Yeah.
And if you retreated, you lost that ability. That's it, right?
Yeah. So the easiest way to turn that off is you might be thinking, well, what if you shoot him? Then obviously that's when it's really impacting it. But it didn't matter that the unit targeting you was inside or outside 8. It's just that
had to be in combat or something. Yeah.
Well, yeah. So all you had to do is tow one unit into 8 inches of that greater demon, and then all of a sudden his ward save's gone.
Yeah.
We're going to see that the ward saves got moved onto the demons, but it's not universally 5 up. It's dependent on what war scroll it is. But it's no longer vulnerable to being turned off, and either by retreating or having someone nearby. So that's good.
Yeah, I mean, it makes your little demons weaker, obviously, but if it had to move to some scroll, I'm happy it's on the biggest war scrolls.
Yeah, for sure. And we also lost kind of the bloodbound rule for doing murder rolls, but that makes its way onto the only example we really have. And the question is, are they a unique unit? This would be the Blood Warriors or whatever.
Yeah, Blood Warriors.
Are they a unique unit that has it, or does every Bloodbound still have it? So that the jury's still out on that until we see more. But otherwise, it's just the summoning that we lost. So, okay, let's go down to the battle formation.
Yep.
You want to cover this one?
Yeah, I like this one a lot, actually. So it's called the Khornate Legion, and you get the Butchers of Nations ability. It's a once per turn army thing, and you declare it as or you react to a declaration of you fighting with a friendly Blades of Khorne demon unit. So once that unit has fought, you could actually just pick a friendly bloodbound unit that has not fought before and is within 12 inches of that demon unit, and they get to fight right after that. So it's kind of encouraging you to combine your army. So you're gonna combine demons and bloodbound units, and you're gonna walk them up together at least within 12 inches of one another, and you fight with your Bloodthirster first, for example, and then you could let your Blood Warriors go, which is actually kind of cool. I really like that they want to emphasize the synergy between mortals and demons here.
Yeah, and usually when we've seen a rule that's like this, it's a power pair of a hero that's bound with his unit.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be a demon hero, which is nice. So it can be.
There's also no roll off or anything like that. You basically get the Lumineth lightning reactions for just guaranteed.
Yeah, just so long as you set up your list accordingly and you make sure that they're within range of each other. I think it's flavorful for sure. And they even mentioned just below here that there's another host, a demonic host, a formation that doesn't go to battle with mortals. So this is the one that's obviously built around working together. And I hope that there's a version of something, not necessarily this rule, but something that encourages demons and mortals to work together in some of the other chaos gods too, because seeing armies that are only one or the other sometimes is a little sad when you could mixing and matching.
Yeah, the sentence here, gaining resilience to damage by shedding blood to warp reality itself, almost sounds like you're getting, if you're running a full demon army, you're getting a ward back
Oh yeah, that could be cool. Yeah.
because the locus is gone now. It might actually just give you the locus rule.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think I'd still rather have a 6-up than one that turns off as soon as I
Yeah,
get to
yeah,
the
for
part of the
sure.
board I want to be in.
Hmm.
But yeah, keep going with the rest of the formations we see
Yeah,
here.
so you also get one for the mortals. So mortal armies are more concerned with taking territory and displaying dominance than their supernatural allies, while an earth-shaking stampede of Juggernaut simply crushes anything before it under their unstoppable carnage. So you get a little bit of everything, I feel, and there's really nothing else that they could have served you except for a magic ignoring subfaction, almost like the OBR one. What's it called?
Yeah. Null Myriad.
Null Myriad, yeah, because that's the one rule that you lost, right? The bounce, the
Yeah.
magic bounce off.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, this will probably increase control scores for mortals, and then the earth-shaking stampede of juggernauts. Who knows, man? Mortal wounds on charge, maybe.
I mean, I just have always, since I was a kid, loved the Juggernaut models.
Yeah, and they're
Like
fantastic now.
I and so like this because you traded me some Khorne bloodletters.
Yep.
I've been wanting to play Khorne ever since I read the book, but it just the timing was off. And then as anyone knows me talking about this stuff, I don't like meta armies that much, so I'd rather play it when it's off meta. But I've been wanting to play a Skull Cannons list or a Juggernauts list this whole time, and now I'm hoping that rule is good enough to get me finally in the door with Khorne because I think Khorne's really cool. So
Yeah, I agree.
yeah. All right, let's take a look at this like non-interesting thing they shared
Yeah,
with us.
man, this. I, I do not understand GW's thinking at times. Maybe that's why they're not giving us the books beforehand, Ryan, because I'm so critical at times. But I mean in the best possible way. But if you're showing the Khorne players something to get excited about, you're showing them the way to summon Hexgorger skulls, but not what they do. Why are you showing them this? Then
I mean, they talked about it in the text, but I don't trust anything that they write down there as being like because it leaves so much up to interpretation, right?
yeah,
We know what the spell used to basically do. I don't even know if it's worth going into and spending time on. As far as I can tell, the it's gotten a little harder to cast or chant, pray. Its range got expanded because it was wholly within 8 of the a chanter, and now it's wholly within 12, and then they have to be within 2 or with 8 inch of each other, and that was always the case. So I don't know. I mean, they have to be outside of 9 now because they're going to move around, but that's kind of what, or I think they move around. Usually, when they said that the ones that are set up outside of 9 of enemy units are usually the ones that move.
yeah.
So maybe
It says in the flavor text they drift across the battlefield.
sure. I don't remember if they. Oh yeah, they could move before. Yes, I'm sorry. So there was maybe one that couldn't. No, all 3 of them could. I'm totally wrong. But anyway, this had like an anti-magic thing that was really rough for Magic players, and it looks like it's probably going to do the same thing based off of the rules text. But yeah. So I don't know. I don't know why they shared this. Why didn't they? Why they didn't just share one of the prayers?
Yeah, just one from something from the pre-lore
Yeah, that
would
would
be
have been
fine.
better.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so let's move on.
Yeah,
Um,
so we get a pretty cool thing here.
so there are 3 bloodthirsters, and I'm not gonna lie. I'm keeping track of which one's which in my head, and I'm not counting Scarbrand. He's easy to remember.
Yeah.
The generic ones. This one, if I'm not mistaken, has always been colloquially known as the Boom Thirster because of his
Mm-hmm.
mortal wounds thing he does.
Mm-hmm.
We also had like the leader one that used to be good at like buffing your army's charges, and then there was the other one, the Wrath of Khorne one. So anyway, we're on to the Boom Thirster himself. And Jonas, you want to cover some of what we see here?
Sure, yeah, I love to because I'm really excited about this guy. So 12-inch move, 16 health, 4 up save, and 5 control. Somewhat the same that he was before, I think.
Yeah, the move is on the top bracket, so nothing got changed. Plus,
Yeah.
he's got the 5 up ward all time.
Yeah, there you go. But the impressive stuff starts below that wheel. So the Great Axe of Khorne, 5 attacks, which is the same as it had before, but its hit went down a digit. So it went from 4 to 3, which is actually an improvement, and a pretty vast one if you're looking at what follows after that. Because as I said in a previous video, a wise sage told me you better improve the front end of the row rather than the back end. And if your back end is as good as Bloodthirster's, pun intended, it's pretty nice that you get a +1 on your hits, so that's good.
Yeah, that's right.
Wound on a 2+, rend 2, but you get 1 extra rend, which is also an improvement if you're hitting infantry. And guess what? Infantry is the most common thing in the game, so you're probably gonna hit a lot of infantry. But then the damage is 5. It was D3 plus 3 before, so there's, best case scenario, you're losing 1 damage, obviously. So if you're best case for the D3, obviously. But the fact that you still get 5 from that equation without any bracketing and stuff is pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, I would rather personally take a flat 5 than a D3 plus 3. Personally.
Definitely. Yeah.
I mean, he swings in another way that's way more important than the swinginess of his damage.
Yeah.
So,
But it's still pretty nice. I mean, this is going to cleave through a lot of units. And remember, Hexgorger and all that kind of jazz is also infantry now. So
yeah,
he's going to work his way through stuff. His battle damage profile is a little bit rough. Losing 2 on that profile is big. But he got a inbuilt 5-up ward now before I'm moving to the juicy stuff, which is a major improvement of life and quality here. And he's got a nice rampage. I'm still saving up the best for last. So once per turn, army, in any charge phase, if this unit charges this turn, so it could be in your opponent's as well with a counter charge, for example, pick an enemy unit within 1 inch of it to be the target. So that's pretty friendly, right? So a lot of rampages have said pick a monster or pick an infantry unit. This just says pick any enemy unit.
Yeah.
At least in 1 inch, of course. You roll D3 and on a 2+, inflict an amount of mortal damage equal to the roll. So this is something that we see a lot of. But nice boost here. If the target is infantry, inflicted an additional 3 mortal damage on it. I mean, they keep making up rampages, Ryan, that would have fit on a ogre Frosthorn war scroll, and they just keep making better things and leaving the ogres in the cold.
Yeah, those poor stone horns. But we did hear recently confirmation that mount traits exist, so that could be a thing.
Yeah, but then the thing why you would usually bring him was he had a massive AoE mortal wound ability. You still get that in a little bit of a way, but it is nerfed a little bit. So each time an attack made by this unit scores a critical hit, which was the same thing it said when you hit on a 6, but that's a critical hit now. You inflict D3 mortal damage on each enemy unit within 8 inches of it after the fight ability has been resolved. So the only nerf here is to the damage. I think it was 4 at its top brackets.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it bracketed down. And I understand that a lot of Khorne players are like, well, I loved my, flat out 4 damage, and now if I roll a 1, it's 3 less. I get that. But with mortal damage going completely away for a lot of units, still retaining some shape of mortal damage and still a quite effective shape at that, I think this is a win.
It's actually not a nerf. It's a buff in a way that you're not thinking of.
Okay.
Because it moved from the to wound roll to the hit roll. And implicitly, a to wound roll doesn't even get a chance unless the hits go through. And the hit roll used to be a 4+.
Dang, that's a good point, Ryan.
And now, mathematically, the output is the same when he's on his top bracket as in when he's not wounded. It's 1 2/3 mortal damage to each unit that's within 8 mathematically.
Mm-hmm.
But when he used to bracket, not only did his attacks profile go down, which it still does to its lowest profile, but the amount of mortal damage it did was on the proccing went down too. And now it's 4 times better when he's wounded.
Yeah.
So it's still doing quite amount of work. It's going to do on average 1 mortal wound then against each target when he's bracketed. So even when this guy's getting down, he's doing pretty well. And now you mentioned the hit roll gets better. Obviously, having +1 to hit on what his profile is doesn't change whether you get crits. So that actually would have had a bigger impact if it was still stuck to the wound roll. But in general, I see this as a side grade at worst and an upgrade if he's on what's it called? Sorry, if he's on his lowest bracket or he gets bracketed. So I wouldn't actually see this bad. It's less swingy because it's not going to ever do 4.
Yeah.
But it's still going to pull a lot of weight, I think.
Yeah, I mean, you gain a lot, right? The rampage is super effective versus small heroes. The wards that you now have for forever makes him so much more durable. I mean, I'm scared of this guy.
Well, he was always scary. I think the thing that's nice about it not going off, like if you had a hero that doesn't have a ward save and the Boom Thirster got off 2 crits, and your guy was just not even in combat with him, he was just standing around, your guy's just gone.
Yeah.
And now it's less likely to have that feel bad impact while still mathematically doing the same amount of damage, just spread out to more, well, not even being spread out. It's just it goes off more reliably now, which is, I think, a better trade-off than having some extreme jackpot thing that you used to have. So,
yeah.
Anyway, that's my thoughts on that. But I like this War Scroll. I would see this as a buff. So,
yeah, I somehow expected the Bloodthirsters to have some sort of summoning mechanic, to be honest. Like the Create and Clean one does, for example.
Oh, you mean like a resurrection mechanic?
Yeah.
I mean, that could be on the leader one, maybe, the Unfettered Fury. He typically had a more techie role in the army. Yeah.
Pretty good War Scroll.
Yeah.
Let's move into the Bloodletters.
Also a good War Scroll, but a little easy to cover real quickly.
Yeah.
So, I mean, they've got the 6-up ward instead of the 5, which we were referencing earlier, if you look at the bottom of the War Scroll down there. But again, it can't go away. So once they get into combat, remember, they're probably one of your screen units. So they're going to be one of the first things whose ward would have gotten turned off anyway. And now that they're bringing units back, I actually, because look at this ability that they've got. At the end of any turn, if it's in combat, it's basically clan rats. It's returning D3 slain models to the unit.
Yeah, but it has 2 wounds.
Well, 2 wounds and the same save and a 6-up ward, a same save as a clan rat. So I see this as a really strong buff for this unit. It used to bring it back on failed battle shock, on battle shock rolls of 1.
Yeah.
But I think this is way better because it just goes off all the time. And of course, we know battle shock's gone anyway. And then the output is exactly the same as it was, which is doing per model an average of 2/3 wounds before save with -1 rend, and then 1/3 mortal wound per model. So a unit of 10 of these guys is doing quite a lot of work for a battle line unit, like a basic chaffy kind of unit. And they're sticking around. I think they have a great role to play.
Yeah. So. This just shows how easy it could have been to make the Nightmare Revenants from Sylvanet good.
Oh yeah, the Spite Revenants.
Yeah, because I was comparing this War Scroll with theirs because there are a lot of similarities here, for at least for the bottom half of the scroll, and I was like, okay, so they have 1 less attack, but their hit profile is better. They have actual rend. They get a musician and a standard bearer, and they have this decent ability, and this would have been super flavorful for the Nightmare Revenants as well. I always forget their name.
Spite Revenants.
Spite Revenants, yeah. Because I mean, if you're in combat, you're maybe summoning nightmares from your opponents, and from your opponent that creates more Spite Revs or something like that. But I like this War Scroll a lot. It's cool. It's chaff, but it's good chaff.
Really good chaff. I mean, that attack profile is like literally what Namarti Thralls are on.
Yeah.
Without getting whatever their buff is to the damage if they're against a certain, or to attacks or whatever it was now against certain units, and they're coming back, and they got twice as much health. So and they're doing crit mortals, which I don't think they were doing. So I don't know how much a unit of 10 of these guys is going to cost, but I'm pretty psyched about it actually.
If you're looking at Wardens previously, they also had two attacks, hit on threes, and only wounded on threes against the charge. But they also had one rend in that case. They also did a mortal on sixes. So the stat line here is very comparable to when Wardens got charged, and they would absolutely decimate enemy units if there were 20 of them. So yeah. And they don't actually have 2 health, and they also don't come back in combat. So, and no ward. So I don't really know how to measure the points cost for this kind of units.
I think they'll be like 180-ish, maybe.
Okay.
Let's see what they cost now. Blood letters for 10. Oh no, they're 180 now. I think they're going to go up. This is a decent profile. So, but I don't know. I like it.
It's gonna be easy to get 20 into combat with a 3-inch combat range now.
100%. So,
and then you're fighting them for a long time if you get to return D3 at the end of any turn.
You know what's interesting is that they've been changing all the profiles, as we know, like the hit and wound profiles, to match a certain type of expectation from what they look like they would do. And I could have totally seen one of these 2 scores being a 4, easy.
Definitely, I agree. Yeah,
but they didn't. I mean, this is a top 3rd edition, like a elite regular chaff unit profile. This is like Executioner's level. This is like, it's solid. And 2 wounds apiece is nothing to sneeze at. So
it's very good.
I'm feeling it. All right, let's move on to Karanak, whatever.
Weird War Scroll, Ryan. Why don't you take this one?
Yeah, so this is like the unique version of a Fleshhound. And I don't really know what to make of this profile. So let's just take a look, I guess. I think it's got similar stats to what you're going to expect from a Fleshhound, in that it's got 8-inch move, a 5-up save. It used to have a 4-up save, so maybe the Fleshhound's going to get worse too. Who knows? Control 2 because of its 7 health. Its output actually got reduced because it used to have 2 profiles. The only thing that got better about it is that it can get up to -2 rend, or 2 rend, I should say, against a hero. So I guess it wants to go hero hunting, which is part of its lore. If we look at its deployment phase ability, it's picking an enemy hero, that even one that's in reserve, pick one. And then it's going to have this enemy movement phase ability, Stalk the Prey on the right there, that in the enemy movement phase, and I'm pretty sure that's the end of the enemy movement phase, but I could be wrong, it can make a... if the quarry, that model moved any amount, but I guess standing still doesn't count as moving, it cannot move into this unit can make a move of 8 inches, so basically a normal move, but it's not called that. And it can not move into combat, but it must end that move closer to its quarry. So basically, it just keeps stalking it the rest of that the game, which is interesting. But I don't know if this thing's going to survive as it keeps getting closer and closer to its target. It's only got a 6+ ward, and it's got the beast keyword, which marks the first time we've seen the beast keyword on something that can in fact control for more than one on an objective. Which brings me to the next ability. The passive ability here is that, and this is, you got to read it carefully. While this unit is wholly within 12 inches of a friendly Fleshhound's unit, so you measure from the edge, any edge you like, of kind of where the perimeter of where those Fleshhounds are staying, and then as long as this model is wholly within 12 inches of that perimeter, you add 2 to charge rolls for this unit. And then on the other side of the equation, while any friendly Fleshhound units are wholly within 12 inches of this unit's bubble, so you got to measure it differently, they can ignore the effect of the beast ability. Now, obviously, that means that they are also going to be beasts. And as we've seen before, the beast ability, not keyword, but the beast ability means that they can have a max control score of 1, regardless of how many models are standing on the objective. So that's cool that we see something that's interacting with that. So he wants to go play around with the Fleshhounds and make sure that they can actually count as something on the field. Problem is, I think as soon as you snipe Karanak, that's going away. And then, so it makes me think, why would I lean into this strategy if all that my opponent has to do is just shoot this guy off the field? Now, granted, he is a hero, so he's going to get guarded, guarded in unit or whatever it's called. But I don't know if it's going to enable the Fleshhounds build the way it seems like it wants to. Because, yeah, I mean, maybe with one unit. It depends on how good flesh hounds are.
Yeah, they might actually
And
be bodyguarding him some way.
yeah, that could be cool. I mean, it'd be flavorful, and having some doggos is neat. Um,
Yeah, I think what I need to be sold by this war scroll is I need to see the flesh hounds, and I hope that they have some sort of bodyguard mechanic and a way to follow him, as in if they are,
uh,
you know what I mean? Like
yeah, that'd be
he
cool.
leads the pack to somewhere, and then you're just running like 10 flesh hounds and Karnak, and that would be fine.
Well, that gives them a lot of movement. They're basically moving 16 at
Yeah,
that point.
yeah.
As long as their opponent moves. What it's really saying is the opponent just has to make that unit not move. But then, of course, you get to choose which hero it is. So
Mm-hmm.
you probably choose a hero that you think is going to want to move.
Yeah.
Um, he lost the +2 to charge is nice, but it used to be automatic, which makes me think the Fleshhounds will also lose it, so they'll have to be within his bubble too, or something. Who knows? And then he also lost his unbinding wizard as if, or
Yeah.
unbinding his spells if he had wizard one, and then doing D3 mortal wounds if he was doing it. Um, and he also lost his bringing Fleshhounds closer to, like, he had a different summoning range, which could even bring them into combat. But there is no summoning anymore, so I guess that's not so crazy. So the only thing that got better really was that the blood god, stalking the prey. It used to not he used to not be able to move unless he was outside of 9 inches from all enemy movements or units. I mean, but then it wasn't bound to whether or not the prey had moved. So there's a lot of subtle changes here, but I don't really get it, and I don't really get why they showed us this war scroll. But that's nothing new for GW in the articles thus far. So um, the war scrolls look fine. So I don't really mind. Do you have anything else you feel about this unit you want to share?
Yeah, I want someone in the comments to sell me this war scroll.
Sure.
Why does it exist? For the life of me, I could never see myself bring this unit.
Yeah, I mean it's flavorful if you
Yeah,
like the dog
yeah,
build.
yeah. I do wonder though about the stalk the prey rule. The keywords there, Ryan, core and move. Does that mean he can't use redeploy, for example?
I think so because if redeploy says the core keyword, then it would mean you could only use one or the other.
Yeah,
But that's okay. I mean, it's an 8-inch move, so
sure.
better
Yeah,
than.
yeah. That would be totally
Um,
insane. That's what I'm saying. If you can still use redeploy afterwards,
yeah,
that's a lot of movement. So there is that.
yeah. But again, that'd be throwing what I would think of as good money after bad because it's just throwing a CP into this guy too, just to make him
Yeah,
move further.
true, true.
Yeah. You ready for Blood Warriors?
Yeah, I was already scrolling down a little bit.
Oh, okay, so this is our first example of the mortals. I mean, we saw the priest a while ago, but I mean today. Um, so I mean, this is your if well, there are some basic units because they had, if I'm not mistaken, we had Blood Reavers as well. So these are like the elite. I was gonna say these are basic infantry. Blood Reavers are kind of your like dime a dozen dudes, and then with like a one wound and 6 up save, at least formally. These guys are your more elite kind of stormcasty kind of guys with 2 health, 3 up save, 5-inch move, control one. So nothing too crazy there. Their profiles, like this is a story we've seen a number of times with how they've translated or ported over third edition scrolls that had more weapons options. So there are two things to say here. One, they used to have the choice between a ability that kind of like gave up another ability in order to be more aggressive in attacking,
Yeah.
and that was the paired weapons version, or they had the Gore Axe and Gore Fist option, which was where they had a kind of splashback mortal wounds. Now, seeing as I don't see any text under the Blood Warrior's name there, I don't think the other one's going to show up if I had to predict.
I
Kind of like we
agree.
were talking about with the Fire Slayers option and maybe one other unit we saw some. So I think the splashback mortal wounds are gone, but this is the better of the two terms of output, and they just flipped the to hit and wound rolls here. And then the murder rolls stayed the same, but I'll come back to that in a sec. The Gore Glaive here, the big difference here that we've seen in other places is that it is 1 per 10. That's still normal, but the champ can't take that weapon, which used to give you +1 attack. Now, that said, this weapon got +1 attack on this War Scroll. So it's almost as if the champion had taken it, because it used to have 2 attacks, but it did lose a point of to hit. So, I don't know. It's a little bit of side grade. And then, of course, your champ is there adding 1 more attack to a regular Gore axe.
Mm-hmm.
And then the mortal rolls, as far as I'm aware, stayed the same except for exactly how you choose the unit. There was more freedom to choose what the target was of the mortal wounds before. And like I said earlier in the discussion, this used to apply to all bloodbound, so the mortal keyword units. And right now we're not 100% sure because this rule even has blood warriors in the title. Now, the thing that was different about them was that unlike other bloodbound models, they got to roll 2 dice for this anyway. So it could be that this is just their version of that ability and that the other ones still have it, or it could be that they're the only ones that have that murder roll type ability. So we'll have to wait and see. Any thoughts on these dudes?
They look average. The- this is one of those units, Ryan, that's going to be greatly impacted by smaller heroes that run alongside them. That's always been the case for these kind of units. And I just wish they would either have given us Karnak and then the Fleshhound's War Scroll so we could at least start dreaming about that, or a synergistic hero with the Blood Warriors. But now we got like 2 glimpses of a completely separate thing, and it leaves me wanting more, that's for sure. But it also leaves me questioning, like, should I be impressed by this? Having a 3-up save is nice, but is that really a Khorne thing you want, especially if we're going to look at the Spearhead War Scroll down below?
Yeah. It's again, these articles are not covering enough, and so I think you're totally right that if it's got the right power pairs, it's gonna
I
blow
feel
up.
like they did better at the beginning.
Yeah, it seems like they've changed their focus a little bit
Yeah,
as it's gone.
like halfway through, they decided not to show all the god malls anymore. They decided not to show all the synergistic pieces anymore, and now it's just random ass war scrolls, which is fine, which is obviously fine, especially since we're nearing the full rule set anyway. But I just wish we had something to talk about here.
Yeah, we're also not seeing faction terrain anymore, which was on pretty much everything that had faction terrain at the beginning. So
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, I agree. I just looked at the war scroll for the priest again, the slaughter priest, and there's not really that much to say about him. He
No.
was kind of straightforward.
Yeah.
Um, So, if we could scroll real quickly to the photo for the spearhead, not the war scroll, but the spearhead box.
Mm-hmm.
Every single time, we haven't mentioned this, but every time they've shown one of these armies, I think they've had like a painter from not the heavy metal team
Yeah.
that's painted one of these, and they're in really weird colors for the army. This might be the first one that is in very standard colors for the army, and I don't know
Mm-hmm.
if anyone out there has a strong opinion about these. What they've let us see of the spearhead boxes, like a painted up version, but I feel like this has been just kind of a weird thing that they've done on the side here. Do you have any strong opinions about them showing weird paint schemes and stuff, or
I,
that this
I
one
actually
isn't that
really
weird?
liked it.
Okay, yeah.
I like
Tell me more.
the motivation that it probably gives new players that you can do whatever you want with your army.
Sure.
And that's the whole idea of Spirit, right? It's for smaller games, it's intro games a lot as well. So just do whatever you want.
Sure. Yeah, I could see, we haven't talked about it, but taking things in regiments now where everything's built around a
Oh yeah.
hero and then the group they bring. I could see some narrative or more paint, like people that are more interested in the
Yeah.
old school battalions
Yeah.
that you could say, I'm going to paint each one as though they belong together.
That's
Um,
cool.
that could be kind of fun and
Yeah,
flavorful.
definitely.
Okay, so let's scroll down to the Mighty Skull Crushers. For whatever reason, this War Scroll didn't load when the article first came out, so I'm glad it did. Um, you want to cover this a little bit?
Yeah, so I thought it was a typo because I don't think we've seen a lot of the 2-up save things in our faction focus reviews.
Just
Oh,
Annihilators with shields,
yeah,
yeah.
I was just gonna say I think it's only Stormcast. So, and that's on a pretty slow war scroll, even though they can teleport. Having a 2-up save, Ryan, on an 8-inch move, 5 health hitbox
Yeah.
is always good. Always.
Yep.
I mean,
Yep.
their war scroll could literally be empty, and it would still be good.
Oh yeah.
So,
100%. I agree.
just being able to, especially if you think about Khorne and their murder lusts, this could actually just move 12 inches into combat, so you don't actually even have to take any charging stuff that might go off against you. You would obviously lose your charge bonus here if they retain it, if it moves to standard play, but they tend to keep the stat wheel the same, and the stat wheel itself is enough for me to like this unit.
Yeah. When you say 12, you mean 8 plus 3,
Oh,
so
sorry,
11?
11, yeah.
Yeah. Okay,
Yeah.
cool.
It's so often 12 that my head just skipped, my mouth skipped to 12, but in my head it's
Sure.
11.
Nice.
So yeah, that's all already pretty good. If we're looking at the melee weapons then, so the Blood Glaive, you get 3 of these guys. So 3 attacks, 3s, 1 rend, 1 damage, and it gets up to 2 damage on the charge. This is kind of standard that we're seeing from elite-ish cavalry. The Blood Knights are somewhat the same, I think, which is fine. Especially in the spearhead boxes, this will do some work. And then the Juggernauts attacks, 2 attacks, 4s and 3s. I feel like this used to be better. The hit roll used to be better, I think.
Yeah, but it had hold on. I did the math on this. This was the mount is actually it because of the damage it does on the D3. It used to only be 1. It comes out to mathematically the same, except now it has rend. It's just swingier because of the D3 and the 4+ to hit instead of a 3+.
Yeah.
So it's swingier, but it actually functionally on average is better.
Yeah, so that's pretty good still. I feel as an attack profile, and then you have the charge ability. You're in your charge phase, but this might completely change. If this unit charges this phase, pick an enemy within 1 inch to be the target, then roll a dice on a 2+, inflict 1 mortal damage on the target. I mean, that's pretty lame.
Super lame, because it used to be based off of how many models you had in your unit, and then you could max out at doing 2 mortal wounds on a 5+ for each guy. So
Yeah.
I expect that'll get changed with the
It will.
full.
This is their way of balancing out the boxes. And if you look at the Khorne spearhead box, there's quite a lot of units in there that are also quite good in and of themselves. So just to balance them out, I think they wanted to not make these guys do everything in a spearhead box, because if you move quite fast, you have a good save, and in spearhead there's not a lot of ways to mitigate saves or pass them or surpass them with a mortal damage. And you have a pretty nice attack profile. You can also have a good charge bonus. So I think that's why they nerfed it as heavily as they did.
Yeah, so the impact, or not impact, it's smart, but the charge that they're getting here, when they're on the charge, they're actually doing a good bit better output than they did before. But when they're not, it's kind of on the same as one of their, well, they had 2 profiles on their worst profile, the one that had more range. But so, I mean, I still think this is a very solid unit. Even what you said, like even if they had 5s and 5s and couldn't do anything in combat, but just were 5 wounds sitting on a 2+ save, I think there would be a role for them if the price was right.
It would actually even probably be better, Ryan, because their cost would be lower.
Yeah.
Yeah, it makes me wonder what the Bloodthirsters on Juggernaut gonna look like.
Worse, but
yeah, they don't have the shield, obviously, and they're not armored, so
they were. I think they were on 3+ before, but they might even be 4+ now because of that. What you just said about armor,
but probably 6 upwards.
Yeah. You know what's so for people at home that don't know how strong a difference between a 3+ save and a 2+ save makes, if you have 5 health and you have a 3+ save, that one model, if the target that's trying to kill you is throwing a bunch of attacks at you, they need to throw on average with a 3+ save, 5 health, 15 successful attacks that go through through the hit and wound stage, and say they don't have rend and they only had 1 damage. They need to have on average 15 of those go through to kill one of these skull crushers. If it goes up to a 2+ save, then they have to put 30 through. That means if you had damage 1, you would have to have 30 attacks worth that make it all the way through hit and wound on average to kill 1. And imagine these guys all out defensed, then that's also true if you had rend 1. So
sick.
It's a crazy amount of wounds absorption unless they have high rend. And even if they have high rend, obviously you're ignoring more than most units would. I mean, if they have rend 2, you're still needing to put 10 of those shots through to kill one model.
Hmm.
So it's tough, and that's why it's good that Krognos is not on a 2-up anymore, because you know something like that can also do so much output is just a liability. Um, but anyway, I think this unit is still strong, and it makes me want to play Corn even more to know that this unit is still a viable option for certain
I think
builds.
it's also gonna wreck phase in Spirit, Ryan. I mean,
Yeah, it's definitely not going to die. I mean, I think it's
oh,
going to be hard to remove.
yeah. So yeah, that's it for the faction focus. I want to quickly look at the paragraph below the image here. Um, you can read all of the faction focus articles below. The faction packs, which is the indexes with all their rules, will be available to download for free before Skaven Tide is released. So Skaven Tide is the 13th of July, I think.
I think you're
So
right. That weekend, that Saturday.
yeah, so that's pretty good that we're getting to see all of the rules before that. And as Ryan mentioned, we might already see all the core rules this weekend. And then the digital battle tomes for Stormcast, Beasts, and Bone Splitters very soon after, just to avoid any sort of mix up here. By digital battle tome, they mean rules for the units that are actually squatted. So for your magical chamber there, for Stormcast, all of the Beasts of Chaos and all of the Bone Splitter armies that are squatted, they get once in a lifetime for 1 year your digital battle tome, but that's it. So you're not getting the free Stormcast Eternals battle tome in its entirety. Just want to clear that up.
And yeah, not yeah. Okay, so you're referring to the battle tome cast will get after the index
Yeah,
comes out.
yeah.
Yeah. So no, that'll be purchased probably the normal way. I think maybe one interesting thing to discern out of this is that because these three are labeled as battle tomes, they're distinguishing them from the indexes in the
Mm-hmm.
sense that they're only valid for 1 year, like you said, but I think they're going to have more fleshed out rules. There's a good chance that they're going to have the kind of rules we're going to come to expect from a normal battle tome instead of an index. So, for example, they might actually have a battle traits page that's longer than one page. They might have more than one spell lore. They might have more options, um,
That'd be
so that
interesting.
you can enjoy playing that army at full force, at full strength for one last year, and then call it a day. I don't think that's too strong of hopium. I think that's actually a reasonable interpretation of what they're going to do,
Yeah.
so that it feels like they had a legitimate chance for that last year that they've
Yeah,
got. So,
usually fully fleshed out Baltons are usually stronger than indexes. So imagine at the start of fourth edition, Beasts of Chaos and Bone Splitters are the best armies. And you've got all these win at all cost players moving to Beasts of Chaos for 1 year. That would be
yeah,
insane.
yeah, just get some square bases and you're good to go.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, so Ryan, that's the end of the faction focus road for us. How are you feeling
Yeah,
about that?
I'm now that you say it, I'm getting a little weepy too. I mean, not literally, but getting sad. I'm in my feels. But we'll wrap everything up maybe tomorrow with a video that's a tier
Yeah,
list for all this
yeah.
stuff.
Yeah. So, guys, thank you so much for watching once again. As we mentioned in our previous videos, Ryan and I put a lot of effort into these things. If you think about it, it's 5 hours a week only to record this, and then the editing and the prep that Ryan does. I mean, it's it's a lot of hours actually that are added on top of our week. But we feel so much gratitude and so much we get so much validation from you guys, especially when you leave a lot of comments, as you did in the previous videos. It really motivates us and helps us to keep this tempo and this pace up. So please leave a like and a comment and subscribe if you want to stay in touch for the tier list video and further for fourth edition content. And if you want to chat with us specifically or all of our big brains in the Discord, you can find us there as well. We'll see you guys tomorrow then, probably for the tier list, and otherwise we'll see you in another fourth edition video. See you then.